So happy to see you all here. So I'm sorry, I'm like working up until the last minute to prepare for class. I want to get the prayers open so we can get going. Let's see here. Back to you. Share my screen. So let's set our motivation for being here today. And really think, what is it that made you click the Zoom link to join in class today? Why are you here? Have it very clear in your mind. And then make it as big as possible. Like, not only may I be able to think clearly, but may I help all beings to think clearly so that they can see the nature of reality directly and then get out of this cycle of suffering. Is this big enough or should I zoom in?
Yes, thank you.
Sashi Puki Chukshing Me Tok Tram Rirabling Shin Yende Gempadi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwarki Dokun Namdak Singla Chuparsho Iram Guru Ratnamandalakam Niryatayami. Sangye Churam Soki Chuknam La Changchu Bardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Taki Junyen Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Druparsho Sangye Churam Soki Chuknam La Jangchu Bardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Junyen Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho Sangye Churan Suki Chukdam La Changchu Bardu Dakni Kyapsu Chi Daki Junyen Gipe Sunam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Sho. I wish I could have heard your voices. It's always one of my favorite parts in a class is to hear everyone chanting the prayers. I'm just making my Tibetan document a little bigger. Okay. There. Can you see that?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I'm fighting with Zoom a little bit.
Yes, we can see.
You can see. Okay, great. Thank you. So welcome back to ACI course 13. We are doing today our 8th class, moving right along. And today's class is on definitions and the things they define. And the word in Tibetan is sensun. Say sensun. So the subject tonight is from the Dura, as per usual. And Geshe Michael said when he taught this class that he finished all the easy topics and he still had a few classes left. So he started pulling out more challenging topics. So put on your seatbelts. So sen, in sensun, it stands for seni. Who can tell me what seni means? Does anyone remember? Its definition. Seni. And oops, sun stands for sunja. Say sunja. And that is the technical term for it is definiendum. It's a Latin word, definiendum, and it means the thing defined. So when you go to a dictionary and you're looking up a word, that's the word you're looking up. You're looking up the sunja to find out what its sunni, what its definition is. So first we're going to talk about the definition of a definition itself. So how do we define things? How do we make a definition of something? And you probably noticed throughout this course so far that how we define things is critical to our debating. Both parties of the debate have to have the same understanding of what the words mean that they're debating about. So you have to agree about it. And if it seems to you when you're in the midst of a debate that, wait a minute, I think you and I might have a different understanding of what this word means. Let's check that out. How do you define this word? And then you work together and come to an agreement about, okay, what are we talking about exactly? So there are rules about what makes a good definition. And there are 3 qualities that definition should have. And that the phrase for that is Zeyu Chisum Sangwa. Say Zeyu Chisum Sangwa. So sum here, that means 3. Sangwa means complete or altogether. So 3 need to be all together. And what 3? Did say ye, ch. Ch here, can mean many different things. Dharma, things. Here it means quality. So 3 qualities have to be complete. Now, here's a little more difficult concept, and that's Zeye. So we're going to talk about a little bit about Zeye and its counterpart, Takye. So Zeye, the Ze here means material or stuff. And Ye here, usually Ye means like exists or there is, but here it's acting as an adjective and it's modifying Ze. So Zeye means that the thing we're talking about is material. Takye would be its opposite. So tak is conceptualized. It's a conception. It's made up by the mind. So takye is a conceptual thing, whereas zeye is a material thing. This is zeye, and I'm going to have some while it's here. Now, just so you know, the different Buddhist philosophical schools, they talk about zeye and takye, about things that are material and things that are conceptual in different ways. And each of the schools has a different idea. So remember that when in this course, we have on our Sutra school hat, our Sautrantika hat. So we have to remember that. But in course 15, for example, we put on the hat of the mind-only school, a little bit of the hat of the consequence branch of the middle way, but mainly mind-only. And in that course, they talk a lot about Zeye and Takye. So Zeye is defined as something which, when you perceive it, you don't have to focus on all its parts and then think about or conceptualize some whole thing, right? So we're in the lower school, the Sutra school. We're not talking about the consequence branch where something is as you've labeled it, right? So we're not talking about that. In the lower school, it means there are things that you can just perceive them straight out. You don't have to look at parts. You see a cup, and you don't have to look at the handle and the container and the bottom. You just look at it and you see cup. When you see blue, you're not like, if you look up at the sky and see blue, you don't have to think about, oh, that's a lighter color blue, and that's a little bit darker colored blue, and there's a medium colored blue, and then, oh, altogether that's blue. You just think blue. It's not like a big decision. You don't have to look at its parts and then think about it. So that's what Zeye is. The examples of Zeye, or material things, are colors or other objects of the senses, and also the mind. So in this school, the mind is Zeye. You don't have to think about, the left brain and right brain to get to brain or mind. You just think mind. You're just aware. So the definition more or less is that perceiving a zeyue, a material thing, doesn't depend on perceiving separate parts and creating some sort of story or some sort of conception about it. They exist in a material way. Whereas takye, these are things where you do look at parts and you do have to conceptualize about them in a certain way. So an easy example that we can take from the independent branch of the middle way is a car or a person. So if you think about it, we talked earlier about categorizing things. We could categorize things as mental things or physical things or things which are neither mental nor physical, right? So when we're talking about takye, which one of those three are we talking about? Yeah, we're talking about demenduce. Actually, we're talking about demenduce. That which is neither physical nor mental. That would be takye. Perceiving Utpala depends on perceiving the physical body, having a jepak or a deductive perception of the fact that I have a mind, because you can't see my mind, right? And then you put those two things together, the body and the mind, and you say, oh, that's Utpala. And that's a takye in this school. So those two, the zeyue and the takye, will be talked about in many times over this ACI course series. And also if you go to the mixed nuts, you know that in Adam's text in particular, we've talked about what is real and what is a concept, and how and what does that mean for how things are in the world and how you perceive things, how you think about things. So there's a lot to get into, the philosophical schools say, about zeyue and takye. So getting back to our definition and the three qualities that a definition needs to have. The first one is Chir Tseni Yinpa. Say Chir Tseni Yinpa. So Chir here means generally speaking. Tseni means definition. Thank you, Roxana, and Ngonbu, and Tin. Yay. Okay, good. We've got Tseni. And Yinpa, that's another one we've come across many times. That means it is. So the first quality of the three qualities that a good definition should have is that, generally speaking, it's a definition. It sounds like a definition. It looks like a definition. It's like that. If it quacks like a duck and waddles like a duck, It's a duck. So same thing with the definition. If it looks like a definition, sounds like a definition, it's a definition. So something like that thing which performs a function, that sounds like a definition, right? So that's the first thing. So I think we've had other definitions so far in this course, like when we define fire, it's the thing which is hot and burning. And the definition that is wet and flowing is a definition of water. And that thing which is hard and self-supporting is the definition of earth. Very good. That was fast. Int, Russ Int Eka. I know that's not your real name. And then that thing which is light and moving, that's the definition of air or wind. Very good, Tim. Thank you. At this point, when Geshe Michael taught this course, someone asked a question which you may have as well. So this starts with cheer, generally. And we've talked before that when you're in a debate and you want to make some statement of truth, and you want to, we call it in English, hedge your bets. You want to be safe in case someone comes up with some obscure thing that doesn't fit what you're talking about. So you say, generally speaking, so it protects you. So this use here is not really to be wishy-washy or to be like protecting against things. It just means generally speaking. If we look at things from a macro point of view, if we look at things from high above, generally speaking, it looks like a definition. Another word for generally speaking is just for your little vocabulary list, I'm sure you're making for Tibetan, because we want to save the Tibetan language so that we can continue to translate these precious texts for hundreds of years in the future, because there are so many of them. So cheer 10 also means generally speaking. So that's the first thing. Generally speaking, it looks like a definition. The second quality of the three qualities a definition must have, a good definition. We can have bad definitions, but we're talking about good definitions, is Rangi Tsenshi Tengdu Drupa. Say Rangi, Senshi. Sorry, I did that the wrong way. Senshi Tengdu Drupa. Rangi Tseni Tengdu Drupa. So wrong means here, in this case, it. It could also mean me, but, and then rangi is its, possessive. Senshi is the important word here in particular. So we had seni, which is a definition, right? And senja, which is the thing to be defined. Senshi means a definitive example. So we have senshi, I'm sorry, we have senni, meaning definition. We have sunja, meaning the thing we're defining. And then we have senshi, which means a defining example or a definitive example. So here's our senshi for senshi. Here's our definitive example for definitive example. Angupo, or a working thing, that's the sunja, right? That's the word we're defining. And its definition, the seni, is dunche nupa. And we've had this before in an earlier class. Dunche nupa, which means that which performs a function. And the definitive example of a ngupo, the one classically used because there was one in everyone's home, is a bumpa, is a water picture. Because they didn't have piped water in those days. Everyone had a pitcher of water inside their home. So excuse me, I can't tell if I'm about to cough or not. So hopefully not. So it must have a definitive Rangi Senshi, a definitive example of it, Tengdu Drupa. So Tengdu means literally on top of, but it means applies to, it relates to. And Drupa means to exist. So Tengdrupa is to exist on top of or apply perfectly. So if I come and I say, this coffee cup is a classic example of a ngupo, of a working thing, then you should say, well, what do you propose the definition of a working thing is? And I say, anything that performs a function. And you say, does that definition apply perfectly to coffee cup? And I don't say anything. I just take a drink. Proving that it performs a function. Right? Dunje nupa performs a function. So the second test of the validity of a definition is that there is an example that fits it perfectly. The third test is Shengitseni Mayempa. So say Shengi, Seni, Mayempa. So Shen is other, something other, another, some other thing. Shengi would be of something else. Seni is, as we all know perfectly, definition. And Mayempa means it doesn't. So what all of this means is that the definition you're providing is not a definition of another thing. There's a very complicated phrase for the like precise definition of this third quality, but it's really, really long. And so this just captures the essence of this third quality, which means the definition can't be so imprecise as to be able to be applied to another object. It should not be an appropriate definition for some other sunja, for some other word that needs a definition. So it should be sort of airtight. Now, in my mind, when I hear this, I think, well, what about synonyms? What about, we say changing things and working things, they both mean the same thing, right? All knowable things, these are synonyms for what? Does anyone remember? Mitapa. So a working thing is defined as that which performs a function. Oh no, it just flew out of my mind. I better have another sip of coffee. Because that's where all rational thought comes from. A changing thing is that which moves instant by instant. So they have different definitions, even though they can be used synonymously. They can be used for mitakpa. So that's how I got around my original wondering of how a definition could only apply to one thing, but we have synonyms. Okay, maybe I'm the only one who had that little problem, probably. So now we are going to talk about, there has to be, so we said that a definition has to have those three qualities for it to be a good definition. Now we'll talk about the relationship between a definition and the thing it defines. The sunja, right? And there is an elaborate presentation of this called Sensungi Kyapa Golge. Sorry. But Geshe Michael did not go into it because maybe it was not in this particular Dura. So maybe it's something we will find in one of Adam's texts. But what this means is the 8 relationships between a definition and that which is being defined. So instead, we are going to talk about more in general. Cheer. So there are, as there were for a definition, there are 3 qualities for a thing to be defined. So if you think back to a few minutes ago, when we talked about the 3 qualities of a definition, what do you guess would be the first quality of something defined? While you think about that, everything can be defined. Every existing thing can be a sunja sooner or later. There's a definition of everything. There can be a definition of a definition. And you can go on and on and on forever, defining definitions of definitions of definitions. But every object in the universe can have its own definition and should have its own definition, right? That was one of the qualities, the third quality of a definition. So the first requirement, since I don't see anything in the chat, oh, here we go. There has to be, every existing thing has to have a definition. Can a non-existing thing have a definition? Nguyen Vu says yes. Yes, exactly. Thank you. The gotcha. That's where I was going. The gotcha. We have to be able to define what it is a self-existent thing is. An impossible, never existed in the past, in the present, or ever in the future, that we're denying exists. So we have to know exactly what it is we're denying. So yeah, we'd have to define that. So going back to our definiendum, our word to be defined, the first quality is it's appropriate to be defined. The second quality would be about what? Very similar to the second quality of a good definition. It should apply to a typical example. So not only should the definition be related to the example, but so should the word to be defined be related. So the water pitcher, the coffee cup, applies to both working thing, our word to be defined, and thing which performs a function, our definition of a working thing. Thirdly, it shouldn't be a thing defined by any other definition. And that's all. So those are the three qualities. And they're called tak yitsum. Tak yitsum. So we talked just a few minutes ago about the difference between zeye and takye. So you'll notice that when we're talking about the word to be defined, it's not a material thing we're talking about. We're talking about a conceptual thing. So in course 13, Geshe Michael didn't get into it too much. This is something that we can find if we study Adam's book with him. It talks a lot about this difference in a thing to be defined and its definition. So the definition is considered more substantial of being like a thing, and the word to be defined is more conceptual. So if you think about it, which is more material? Fire, the concept fire, or hot and burning? That which is hot and burning. Fire is more abstract. It's just a word, right? That which is hot and burning is more, yes, more material. It's more substantial. And in one sense, it gives us more information, right? If we don't know what fire is just an idea, it's just a word. In this school, Takpa, which is, does anyone remember? Unchanging thing. And Takyut, which is conceptual thing. Those are synonyms. That's just to plant a little seed in your mind for future classes on logic and reasoning. And if you want to, you can take that to the meditation cushion and work on it. Someone in the class asked about, can we make up new definitions, right? Or are the definitions in Duras the only ones we have to work with? Or the definitions in a dictionary that's printed and bound and on your shelf, is that it for all eternity? I mean, no, we know that we come up with new words and new definitions all the time. When Geshe Michael told the story of when he went to India to study, fluorescent lights were a new thing for the monks there. They hadn't been exposed to fluorescent lights before. And there was this debate about whether it had to be hot in order to be a light. Like the way they thought about light before was candles or incandescent lights, sorry. The old-fashioned light bulbs, you probably are all too young to remember, but they got very, very hot when they were on because there's a current going through little tiny metal filaments. And there's a little fire there, and that's what provides the light through the light bulb. But fluorescent lights aren't hot. So they had to think about a new definition for that kind of light. So we are going to go into more detail into a definition and see how the parts work with each other. Okay. So what I'm going to give you here is a 2-line definition. So it's these 2 lines. That's going to be the definition for something to be defined. Sardu miluwe shepat Kangshik. Takdrel ma trulwa shepa. So say Sardu Milue Shepa Kangshik. Kangshik. So this word here, Kangshik, that is a word that when you're reading a Tibetan sentence, if you see Kangshik, you know that it's splitting up one thing and another thing. So it comes in between the first thing and the second thing. So when you see Kangshik, we see this here at the end and we can go, ah, okay, this is the first part of the definition right here, that it's Sardu Milue Shepa. That's the first part of the definition. And that what comes after it, Tok Drel Matrua Shepa, is the second part of the definition. So it's good to read. This is one of those words that it's like just good to remember, because if you look up the definition of Kang, it can mean so many different things. What, who, which, where. It's a particle that's used a lot. And then shik itself means a, n, like one. And you go, a which? A what? No, so that's not what it means. Kang shik together is just an indicator of two parts. Okay, so if you remember, we had this as a definition before. Sardu milue rikpa or Sardu milue shepa, both the same thing. And does anyone remember what a Sardu milue shepa is? Defining, what word is it defining? Well, Roxana says fresh, unerring, and that is what Sardu milue means, fresh and unerring. And what word were we defining? Valid perception, right? Thank you. And don't forget the shepa here. It's a state of mind that is fresh and unerring with regard to what it's looking at. So we've already had the first part of this definition. I'm sorry. We've had the first part of this definition as the definition for another word or phrase, valid perception. But because of this Kangshik, it tells us we're adding on more words. This definition is not only the definition of a valid perception, it's also got some other words. So maybe we're not defining valid perception anymore. We have to see what those other words mean to see if it's making some sort of fine distinction about what word is being defined. Okay, so Kangshik, just to finish up on Kangshik, for those of you who are excited to learn the Tibetan language. So Kangshik is sort of like we've got part one and part two, but it has more power because it's doing that indication of that which came before it is the first, and that which comes after is the second. So it would be more powerful than saying tong, like and, or I had those somewhere. Oh, here they are, way down here. Tong or xing or qing, sometimes law. So kangshik has more, it gives you more information about what this and means, what this combination of things means. Okay, so back to our the second part of our definition. So we can try and figure out what word it is we're defining, or what phrase it is we're defining. So this is Tokdrel Matruwa Shepa. And Tokdrel means free of conceptualization. So what do we know automatically? We're not talking about a takya. We're not talking about a conceptual thing. Matrua, this means unmistaken. Very similar to unerring, isn't it? Those two words. And then again, it's a shepa, it's a state of mind. So to say in plain English, tell me what I'm defining. I'm thinking of a state of mind. It's fresh and unerring. It does not involve conceptualization, and it is not mistaken. What state of mind am I talking about? Wow. Well, let's see. It's not the suggestions here by Wangbu and Mike is direct perception of emptiness. But I didn't say tongpani. I didn't say dakme. I didn't say any of those words related to how the thing exists. So we're just talking about a direct, valid perception. A ngunsum. Ngunsum. It's a tough one. A direct, valid perception. So, excuse me. The different parts of a definition in our example here, where it has two parts, they're meant to achieve two different goals. The first goal is to eliminate all other types of things that might be mistaken for the thing we want to define. So this is the first of the two goals, to eliminate or disallow other kinds of, in our case, perceptions that we might be talking about. That's the first goal of a definition. The second goal is to address common misperceptions about the thing we're defining, common mistaken ideas about the word we're defining. So those are the two goals. It should eliminate, in our case, other perceptions that might be mistaken for it. And it should eliminate or address wrong ideas that people normally have about it. So we can have, for example, a definition of perception. And then if we define a direct perception, what we're doing is we're eliminating any other kind of perception, like an indirect perception. So it's like that. In the United States, where I am, a lot of people have wrong ideas about nirvana. There's a band called Nirvana. And while I thought it was cool that there's a band called Nirvana, it like, oh dear, there goes the word nirvana. People are going to be misunderstanding it now. So you would define it as the permanent stopping of mental afflictions because you've seen emptiness directly. So you're eliminating a whole bunch with that first part of the definition. And then you might add, by the way, it's not that you disappear and fade to black. So that second part would eliminate wrong ideas about what nirvana is. So depending on your audience, or even depending on who it is you're debating with, you might want to add a part of the definition that would dispel wrong ideas or misconceptions about that which you're talking about. Another idea would be, since you folks brought up emptiness, so emptiness is the general absence or lack of a self-existent thing. And then because there are a bunch of like incorrect, or maybe people take other descriptions incorrectly, you would want to add something like, and it's not that it's just the absence of thoughts. You know, it's not that you just remove all thoughts and you'll see emptiness directly. Just to be clear. So now we'll go through this definition we had, this two-part definition of a direct, accurate perception, and see which parts are acting to prevent or disallow other things, and which parts are related to addressing mistaken ideas that someone might have about a direct, accurate perception. So, fresh and unerring. What other states of mind are there? Let's back up a little, sorry. What other states of mind are there besides a direct, accurate perception? There are two states of mind. If we get rid of all the states of mind that are direct, accurate perceptions, how many states of mind are left? Generally speaking, there are two. An inaccurate perception would be one, because we're talking about accurate perceptions, right? So it's not talking about inaccurate perceptions. That's a semin. And then, as Mike says, indirect perception, whether it's, well, I think you could say, because we're defining a direct, accurate perception, that we're disallowing a direct, inaccurate perception. And we're also disallowing, because we're saying direct, we're not talking about perceptions that involve logic or conceptualization. We're not talking about deductions. Venerable Kadrin, your lips stopped moving, so I'm assuming someone else is doing the translation. Okay, good. So if we get rid of all the direct, accurate perceptions in the world, what we have left are all the inaccurate perceptions and the perceptions, the accurate perceptions that are not direct, like deduction. Like, I've got to sit here and figure it out. Like, what does the back of Arena's shirt look like? I don't know. It could be pink, like the front of it is. But for all I know, there's a big, there's a saying written on the back, or there's some stripe written on the back. And I have to think about, well, who's Arena? Would she wear a t-shirt that had a saying on the back of it? I don't know her very well. It could be, but it also could not be. But I have to think about it. So I'm trying to go through some sort of logical process to figure it out. So when we say fresh and unerring, we have disqualified invalid or incorrect perceptions, inaccurate perceptions. Like if you were to, I don't suggest you do this, but you probably have had this experience where, like, maybe when you pull on a very tight sweater and it like squishes your eyeballs, and then you let go and you see two things. You see, instead of one cup, you see two cups. I actually have a disease in my eyes that where I get that effect. I have to be very careful driving. If I see two roads to go down, which one is the road? Anyway, so that would make it an incorrect or an inaccurate perception. And then it also eliminates conceptualization or deduction, thinking about things. Can also mean like conventions, conventional understanding about things is a conceptualization. Freedom, democracy, I don't know, things like that. So the word deduction here, when I'm using it, is just used in a very general sense. So in this school, when you say fresh, what does it mean? Does anyone remember when we had this definition before? It's eliminating memories of, right, exactly. Thank you, Roxana. Eliminating, it's saying that those are not direct, accurate perception. They're actually not an accurate kind of perception according to this school. So now we talk about the second part, and the word unmistaken is added. Why would we need to add unmistaken if we've already talked about unerring? Okay, I'm thinking I just lost why we had to add it. This is embarrassing. It has to do with the second goal of a definition, which is to dispel wrong ideas about the thing you're defining. So the use of unmistaken, there are some schools of Buddhism where, if because of my disease, when I see double, when I see one thing is two, that's not mistaken. That is considered accurate. Unmistaken, adding it here is to say, well, you can have a direct perception, but it's not necessarily a valid perception. And I know things get a little tricky with these words, valid and accurate and correct. And they sort of mean different things. And those will be talked about or are talked about in Adam's book, for example. We should have been doing Adam's book, right? Since I talk about it so much. So adding the word unmistaken addresses the common misperception that might occur to anyone, which actually is thought by most of us, which is that if I can see it, it must be true. If I see it with my own eyes, it must be correct. But, squish your eye and you see double, and no, that's not correct. So it's just to eliminate that mistaken and, dare I say, dangerous idea that if you can see it, it must be true, it must be correct. The other idea we added in our second line of this definition was free of conceptualization. And this addresses another wrong idea held by, this is an old Indian school, so not even a Buddhist school, philosophical school, called the logicians. And they believed that even the perception of blue required conceptualization. It required thinking about it, that somehow your mind has to pull together different parts of blue to see blue. So that's why there's the phrase free of conceptualization, to get rid of the wrong idea that you can have a direct, valid perception which involves conceptualization. Because according to this school, it does not. So those are the two functions of a good definition. And that's called Rik Mitun Selwa. Say Rik Mitun Selwa. So Rik here means type or class, a type. Mitun means not similar, dissimilar. And Selwa means to eliminate or to disqualify or to disallow. So that's the first quality of a definition, the first type of definition, the first part of a definition is to disqualify things that are of a dissimilar type, things that are not similar. So in the case we had, we were disqualifying the dissimilar types of deductive accurate perceptions and inaccurate perceptions. So we cleared those away. We got rid of those. And then the second part is to disqualify or to address wrong ideas. And that's Loktok Selwa. Say Loktok Selwa. So Loktok means wrong idea. Lok is wrong, and tok is idea. Now, we've talked about this before, and we will talk about it probably forever, because it's very important for us to see this distinction. Tok is distinct and very different from tok. It sounds exactly the same. Tok, tok. The only difference is how it's spelled. This has the letter sa at the end. So this just means idea. It can frequently mean wrong idea or bad idea, or kind of like an opinion, like that kind of idea. Like I have that thought about the color blue. It's the perfect color. That's just a tok. That's just an idea I have about blue. Where tok, same, I should have pronounced it exactly the same. So sorry, tok is with the sa suffix, it means a realization, realized correctly. So you could say in a sentence, to use these two different toks, I thought she was my friend, but then I realized she wasn't. Actually, I should do the opposite, right? I thought, I had the idea she wasn't my friend, but then I realized, then I thought she was. And they sound exactly the same. So when you're debating and someone uses, and you happen to be debating in Tibetan, which can be very fun, and you happen to hear the word tok from your opponent, you may want to go, excuse me, is that with a saw or without a saw at the end? Are you just talking thought or are you talking realization? Okay, so we've now covered all of Sensun. We've covered all of definitions and things to be defined. Now we're going to go into formal logic. And I have to first apologize to you because I didn't get the Tibetan altogether. So I'm going to stop sharing, but I will complete that and get it uploaded for you to have. So you can, listen carefully and hopefully the Tibetan will. Someday, if you're interested in Tibetan, you can go back and apply, get the spellings for the words that I'm going to say. So in formal logic, we are now going to talk about correct reasons for the absence of something which involves something that can be seen. So we've already talked about in a previous class, correct reason for the absence of something that isn't normally perceived, right? We talked about hungry ghosts, right? Not everyone has seen those. So the phrase for this is Nang Rung Bam Mikbe Tak Yang Dak. Say Nang Rung Mam Mikbe Tak Yang Dak. Nang means to appear. Rung means appropriate or possible. So Nang Rung, for our purposes, when we're talking about debate and this particular kind of correct reason, it means it's perceptible to our debate opponent. So just to underscore the importance of when you're debating with someone about something that they can't see directly, which are normally imperceptible, number one, we have to be very careful about not judging other people, because we're talking about something that is hidden or not normally perceptible. And the other thing we can think about is that one of the most important goals of Buddhist logic is not to win a debate. It is not to win an argument, not to be right, but to prove things to ourselves. It's only us who practices and purifies our world through our understanding and our practice. So it's us who has to be convinced of things. And our opponent is helping us understand clearly. So nangrung, we're talking about things that can be perceived, proving the absence of things that involves something you can see. To give you some examples, because you will have to name one on your homework, we'll do this I'll give you this a couple of teeny little debates. Senmoi gyala chichen. Dua mepa. Me mepe cheer. So that's a debate. Senmo gyatso. Let's talk about chichen. Let's talk about senmo gyatso. Senmo means nighttime, the black of night. And gyatso, does anyone know gyatso? Ocean. Thank you, Roxana. It's a Dale in Mongolian, like Dalai Lama. Tenzin Gyatso is his Tibetan name. So, Tsenmo Gyatso La Churchen. Let's talk about nighttime ocean. We're talking about the surface of a huge body of water at night. Dua mepa. Dua is billowing smoke. Mepa means there isn't any. Dua mepa, there's no billowing smoke there. Me beicher. Me beicher. Me means fire. Me means there is no. And cheer, as we remember, means because. So me beicher means because there's no fire there. Let's talk about the ocean at night. There is no billowing smoke because there's no fire. You couldn't start a fire out there anyway, right? I mean, in theory, a plane could have crashed in flames, and the plane went under and there would be still smoke hanging about. But we're talking Sen, right? We're talking, generally speaking, in a normal case, normal night, pitch black night, no full moon. There's no billowing smoke because there's no fire. Now, the thing used as the reason, the third part, because there's no fire, what's its relationship to the thing we're trying to prove? Is not there. We're trying to prove that billowing smoke is not there. And our reason is that there's no fire there. So the thing given as a reason, fire, the main element, the result of it is smoke. And we're proving the absence of smoke by proving the absence of its cause. And I think that's a common phrase in English to use in general to talk about if the cause isn't there, the result can't be there. There's no smoke, there's no fire. And your language may have a similar kind of phrase to talk about if the if a result isn't there, then the cause wasn't there either. So that's one example of a correct reason for the absence of something which involves something that can be perceived. Now, the second example is, excuse me, Drakzong Chechen, Shapa Mepa, Shingsang Ne Mamikbe Cheer. So, Drakzong Chechen. Drakzong is a bare, rocky mountain crag. Let's talk about a bare, rocky mountain crag. Shepa Mepa. Oh, sorry, Shapa Mepa. So sorry. Shapa means a juniper tree. Mepa means there isn't one. Shapa Mepa. There's no juniper tree there on the bare rocky mountain crag. Xing, in this case, Xing doesn't mean and, like we talked about earlier. This Xing means tree. One of the beauties of Tibetan is the various meanings of a word that not only sounds the same, but is spelled the same. It's a very contextual language. So, Xing, Seme, we know that is by an accurate perception. So, a tree perceived by an accurate perception. Mamikbe, it can't be perceived. Sorry. So the accurate perception, it cannot be perceived by an accurate perception. What can't? The Xing, the tree. A tree cannot be perceived by an accurate perception. So let's say it all in English. Let's consider a bare rocky mountain crag. There's no juniper tree there because there's no tree that can be perceived by an accurate perception. So what's the relationship between a tree, Xing, and juniper trees, Shepa? We talked about this before. This is a kyapche, where one covers another, one subsumes another. So tree includes Shapa, juniper tree. So if there are no trees, there cannot be a Shapa, right? If there are no cars, there cannot be a Tesla. So those are two examples of a takyangdak, a correct reason, which involves proving the absence of something by using something that can be perceived, is possible to be perceived. Any questions on that one? Okay, now what we're going to do is, I think I can get this Tibetan, and then we can just do this together. But it'll take me a second to get that page out of the 363 pages. And what we're going to do now is go through debating format. So this is called Rikpe Drotang. Oh, I can't select this because it's a PDF. Rikpe Drotang. Rikpa, that means a debate. And Drotang, that means the way it goes. So here's the way a debate goes. This is how a debate works. So first, one person says something, and then the other person replies, and then the first person says this, and then the second person says that. So we're going to practice this together, and we'll just go through it once so we know what's going on. So this will have like all the pieces. And unfortunately, it's on multiple pages. So oops, I shouldn't move it so fast. You're probably getting dizzy. Sorry. So we've got one person standing up and another person sitting down. The person standing up, which one is which? So the first person, the one standing up, is our opponent. And the second person sitting down is the one who is like defending. So someone comes along and says, Bumpa toppa yimbe cheer. They start off with a cheer. Isn't that weird? In all our other debates we've talked about, cheer was the reason. But here a person is starting off with a reason. So without even thinking about what they said, the person sitting down can say, Takmaru. That is an invalid reason. That's an incorrect reason. Because, hey, where's the subject? What's the quality you're trying to prove? All you did was give me a reason. That's not a valid argument. Give me a break. So that person says, Takmadru, that's incorrect reason. So the person standing up then says, Bumpa takpa mayim tell. Are you telling me a water pitcher is not an unchanging thing? Not unchanging equals changing, right? The other person says, duh, yes, that's what I'm saying. Mayinte. Now, mayinte means, why not? Or, why the hell not? But I shouldn't do that. I'll just say, why not? That's crazy. Bumpa mitakpa yimbe cheer. Because cheer. Oh, I can collect. Okay. because a bumpa is mitakpa, a changing thing. And then the person standing up says, bumpa mitakpa yimbar tel. Are you telling me a water pitcher is a changing thing? And the person sitting down says, duh, right, I am. So you notice that they've just been going back and forth. You state something, you respond, correct or not. Now, the person who's made the original statement has to verify what they heard. Are you saying this or that? Did I hear you right? You said this? Yes, I said this. And then, like, why or why not? So this could be either mayinte, why not? Or if they made some other assertion, you could say, why? Yinte, why? Then they give their answer. They give their reason, because a water pitcher is a changing thing. And then again, the person who's standing has to confirm that they understand what they heard, that they got it right. Are you telling me a water pitcher is a changing thing? Duh. I am. Yes, right. So that's the back and forth of the Rikbe Drotong, how it is that debates, the format of a debate. Now, if we were all in the same room together, we would practice this together. And just going through this and saying it out loud with someone else, both, so each person playing a role in the debate, and then you can switch, and then each person plays the other role. It's just building a pattern in your mind of how the debate format works. So if you could, it would be most excellent to do this several times with someone. If you could do it on a Zoom call, that's okay. You could probably even ask someone in your family, hey, can you do this silly thing with me? You read this part, I read this part, and then we'll switch. No, you don't have to really understand what we're doing. I just need to practice this. Or, oh, you want to understand what I'm doing? Cool, I'll tell you. I'm learning how to debate. Why would you want to learn how to debate? Oh, because there's something mistaken about the way I view the world that keeps me in suffering, and I want to understand how to think clearly so I can get rid of that mistake. Oh, really? I mean, like that. So this is in your reading. At the end of your reading, I know of the existence of at least 2 Telegram groups where people are meeting to discuss homework and readings and maybe do some debate. I haven't heard that directly, so I don't know if that's true. Oh, I don't see my chat anymore. Where'd my chat go? Ooh, Mike was debating in Tibetan. Yay. So you could join one of those two groups. I think it's Russian and English. If you don't have one for your language, maybe we could, oh, thank you, Mike. Mike put a link to the English discussion and homework questions and that sort of thing and debate group. And Venerable Kadrin just said that the Russian team is going to do debate. So you could join one of those 2 groups if you feel, very good, we have a time and a date. for the English. If you could join one of those two groups, that would be great. If you don't know English or Russian well enough to do this sort of thing, maybe we could just take a few minutes and help you find someone who's in the group here with whom you could practice in your own language. So I'd like to just open up. Oh, so we've got the link to the Russian group. Thank you, Venerable Kadrin. So is there anyone here who feels like they're left out because they don't speak Russian or English very well and wants to find someone that they can do this
Вы можете найти
debate
кого-то,
practice with? No one's alone. Everyone has someone they can practice with. That's fantastic. Great. So have fun practicing. And it may seem kind of silly because you're just saying the same thing over and over. Try it in your language. Then try it in the Tibetan. Just say the sounds. It's planting little seeds in your mind. So try the Tibetan at least once, maybe more if you feel like it. Okay, well, I left a lot of time for making little groups, but nobody needs a group. So we are finished early, which is, you know, a unique situation in the world of teaching ACI Course 13. So thank you all for your participation, for your understanding. I'm zooming back up to the prayers and we'll reshare. So let's take all of, I mean, even if we didn't understand everything, maybe even if we understood kind of, sort of, and maybe if we got something like for the first time and went like, oh, wow, I think I understand that now. All those types of things, take those and let's dedicate them in the highest possible way we can, so that we can bring the result of clear thinking among all beings, so that we can see emptiness directly and get the heck out of this suffering cycle. Yay. Let's make it so. Gewadi Gewokun Sunam Yashe Toksok Shin Sunam Yashe Deichung Wei Tampa Kuni Topa Sho. Okay, my friends, thank you very much. Have a wonderful time with the reading and the homework and the practice debate. And I will see you. Venerable Gyelse won't be joining us on Sunday, so I'll be doing that class. Oh no, it's her today. She wasn't here today. Oops, I forgot to tell you. She wasn't here today. And then Sunday she'll be back on the chat. Okay. All right, bye.